Hey, I have been thinking quite a bit, reflecting this year. I've been led or been shown about the consequences of early developmental trauma. Partly this is because I've been doing the Amnanda process, which is a whole other thing. I've already made another video about that, so I'm not going to go into that here, but looking at I'm not someone who thought that I'd suffered from early developmental trauma. That's what's interesting. And I'm beginning to think it's a lot more common than we actually realise or believe. So this little video is actually about compromised attunement to the self. That's those individuals who, when they were very young, we're talking about pre-verbal stage, pre-2 years old, it happens in the first 2 years of life, and it's an adaptation survival strategy. And the core fear of this strategy is, if I express my needs, I'll be rejected or abandoned. So there's a real fear of abandonment. And at a physiological level, these people can feel they have trouble actually taking a breath in. So like you can do a long breath out, but actually receiving or breathing in, your breath might be half as long. So these types, we tend to identify with longing, when I get the relationship or the recognition or the money or the fame that I need, then I'll be happy. And we've got a shame-based counter-identification, in which we tell ourselves, I don't have needs, I am the giver, I'm the strong one, others need me, I don't need them. So these are the caretakers of the world. They're also the empaths, actually, because this survival strategy is both like a lot of trauma. There's a gift as well as a curse in it. Now, the curse is that we attune to others' needs at the expense of our own, so we neglect our own core needs. We don't even realise we've got them. And the gift is we become the empaths. We're highly attuned to other people's needs or the needs of the group. And this can facilitate great healing ability or great the ability to work alongside others, companion others as they're going through deep transitions. So typically these people, myself included, we don't reach out for what we want, basically because we're afraid we'll be disappointed. And fear of disappointment is actually the same as fear of rejection. So rather than risk rejection or disappointment, we don't even reach out. These people can like to talk because they equate getting attention with getting love. They also have difficulty sustaining energetic charge. What I mean by that is they can get really excited about new projects or new relationships, but they have difficulty sustaining them or completing it if it's a project. And they have a deep longing. We've got a deep longing for having our needs met without actually expressing them. So we would like the rest of the world to be as attuned to our needs as we are to other people's. Basically, we'd like the rest of the world to be psychic. And there's a deep sense from the early years deprivation that our needs can never be met. So, you might have worked on yourself quite a lot, you might have done a lot of developmental work. And it seems that however much work you do, there's always more layers to the onion to peel. So knowing, allowing and expressing their needs is associated with loss and a fear of rejection. So these are the givers of the world, and they're like the shoulders on which everybody cries. They're the ones who adopt stray animals or stray humans and take care of lost people. They can be highly attuned and able to identify with and address the needs of others, but they neglect their own needs. And I guess what my discovery has been really about is that because this all happens in the first 2 years of life, there's a number of reasons why it happens. Maybe mother or the primary caretaker wasn't available. But it's actually to do with broken attachment or insecure attachment. So it's in the first 18 months of life. A number of factors, all relating to the themes of misattunement and loss, can compromise the baby's development. So the early developmental dynamic for this survival style is something like the baby cries out for mother, and if she doesn't come or is unable to provide adequate attuned nurturing, the baby protests. When the adequate nurturing remains unavailable, the baby experiences frustration and distress, and the protest escalates. So if the lack of fulfillment is continued or it becomes chronic, the baby actually gives up, resigning psychologically and physiologically. Giving up is a dominant collapse state expressed as profound resignation. So these are the people who are resigned to their lot in life. And it's a bit like a psychobiological depression that's experienced as this sense that one's needs can never be met. It's like a bottomless pit. So it's really an adaptation to inadequate nurturing, scarcity and deprivation. And this becomes part of the structure of the identity. And of course, this is all unconscious because this is in the first couple of years of life. We're not exactly conscious at that stage. So there's an inability to express need and want, and that translates in our own structures. We don't even know what we need because we're kind of identified with a sense of I can get by on as little as possible. We're almost kind of like proud of how little we can get by on, or how much we can eke out of a small amount, whether that's love or food. So, babies essentially disconnect from or depress their needs and eventually lose touch with them. And that reaction can lead to numbness of sensations and feelings. So the bodily signals related to attachment needs, along with the needs for physical and emotional nurturing and nourishment, get foreclosed in relationships. So this is really vital to understand in terms of our intimate relationships, because it's in our intimate relationships that we tend to reenact our insecure attachments or our trauma survival strategies from the early years. I guess, what do I want to say about it? I think it's really what struck me is that the healers and the empaths of this world actually have this skill down to a T. It's a skill to attune to others' needs and to know empathically what is required in a situation for facilitating healing, or even in family situations. But if I am attuned to others' needs at the expense of my own, then who's taking care of my needs? So this is actually what needs to happen is a reparenting job within the psyche, within the self. It's working with the inner child. It's working with the shadow, like that, the stuff that we push into our shadow or repress, or we make unconscious because we don't choose to identify with that aspect of ourselves. Of course, we end up projecting that out onto others. So the thing about traditional therapy for these types is that it tends to focus on feeling the original trauma and scarcity and deprivation, and this can actually be re-traumatizing. So a more appropriate form of resolution is to focus coaching or the therapy on helping these individuals to attune to their own needs and to express them appropriately, and to actually stretch their muscle for allowing themselves to experience fulfillment and expansion and aliveness. It's almost like these individuals are so identified with scarcity and deprivation that they need help learning how to tolerate fulfillment and expansion. And because we don't, there's also this tendency to collapse in the face of strong feelings. So that tendency to collapse needs to be confronted. There's a tendency for sadness and depression to be default emotions for these individuals, whereas the expansive and positive emotions tend to be more challenging. So there's actually 5 adaptation styles for early developmental trauma, and I've just been talking about one of them, the attunement one. I'm going to do a video on the autonomy survival strategy, compromised autonomy, which happens more between the age of 2 to 4 years. Goes along with the terrible twos and the learning of that no. So watch this space, and any feedback is really welcome.